as fun as it is to shit on, I'd rather focus my efforts onto movies I actually want people to see, and movies that come from studios that actually care.
Bad animated movies. They exist, alright, there's no denying it. Rather they be experiments gone horribly wrong, corporate products with minimal artistic value, or movies where it feels like nobody, including the people making them, wanted them to exist. They may vary in terms of size, budget, and who made them, but they all serve to make the animation medium look bad. But going back to that third thing, these bad animated movies don't just pop out of nowhere. Some geniuses out there are responsible for these heinous creations, these vile stains on the art of animation. And while some studios may be treasured for the masterpieces that they bless the world with, others are reviled and hated for the horrendous filth they set free. And there's one animation studio with such a reputation that just fascinates me to no end. One that won't get out of my head no matter how much I fight against the horror that is their filmography. One that lives in infamy amongst everyone, yet manages to live on regardless. I'm of course talking about the one, the only Vanguard Animation. Now, longtime followers are probably familiar with this studio, but I suppose I should go over the basics for those unaware. Back in 2001, a man by the name of John H. Williams produced a little movie by the name of Shrek for DreamWorks Animation. The film was a massive success, and Sir John saw this success and got dollar signs in his eyes, going on to form Vanguard Animation in 2002. What was meant to be a new CG animation studio to rival the likes of the up-and-coming Pixar and DreamWorks went horribly wrong in ways John could have never imagined, pumping out critically panned and commercially unsuccessful movies one after another. To this very day, Vanguard Animation has never made a successful movie, or one that is unanimously agreed upon to be good. Like, say whatever you want about Illumination, believe me, I don't like them either. But they managed to rake in ungodly amounts of undeserved box office return. Plus, most of their films are at least competent, even if they certainly aren't good. The point is, Illumination at the very least knows what they are doing, and are met with success because of that. Vanguard Animation cannot seem to do a single thing right, rather that be in terms of making quality movies or making movies that make money. Their first three were critical and commercial flops, all resulting in them getting dumped by the distributors of those movies. They then made a direct-to-video sequel that was even worse than the original film. Then they disappeared for 6 years until they would make a grand return with Get Squirrely, because nothing screams quality animation studio like Get Squirrely. They then shot out 4 separate Netflix movies nobody saw, and finally made a triumphant return to American theaters under the prestigious Viva Kids. It just baffles me how this studio manages to stay alive despite a line of so many embarrassing failures. I mean, fuck, they managed to outlive Blue Sky Studios despite, once again, never making a successful or well-liked movie in their 23-year history. Is there some money laundering scheme going on here? Does John Cleese just keep investing in them for some ungodly reason? Is there something, anything at all in these films that I'm just not seeing? Well, only one way to find out, I guess. I watched through and closely studied all 10 Vanguard Animation movies to get the full picture on their entire catalog. I had already seen and even reviewed some of these movies before, but today we're doing the real deal. Reviewing all of their feature films to once and for all find the missing piece of the Vanguard Animation puzzle. And to add to the fun, we'll be starting with the peak of their filmography and working our way down to absolute eternal madness. Because, spoilers, I can confirm that this studio has never once made a good movie. People say that about Illumination while pretending Despicable Me 1 isn't good, but here it's actually true. I would dare someone to make a case for any of these being above average, let alone within 100 miles of good. When we start out, we'll just be talking about generic kids movies, but by the end, we'll be tearing into some truly abominable shit. Movies that I don't think a single person in the universe will stick up for. Movies that send a chill down my spine every time I hear their name uttered. Movies that are actual human torture I would not wish upon my worst enemy. Well, it was only a matter of time before I forced myself through this. So let us explore the filmography of Vanguard Animation. Forgive me, Lord, it had to be done. Starting off with the least bad Vanguard movie, in fact, the only one I would not call some level of bad, we have their magnum opus, their Spider-Verse moment, their one and only freshly reviewed movie on Rotten Tomatoes. The one time they actually locked in and brought us what is undoubtedly the best thing they've made in their 23-year-long history. And without further ado, the award for the bestest Vanguard movie goes to Rally Road Racers. Whoa, yeah, crazy, I know. Rally Road Racers is special to me, as I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that I am an integral part of this movie's legacy. Look it up on YouTube and yup, there I am. Go to its reviews on Letterboxd and there I am again. I'm not sure how I feel about being the Rally Road Racers guy, but I mean, if I have to be the spokesperson for any Vanguard movie, there are literally no better options than this. And I mean that because I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that this is objectively the best film this studio has ever made. I don't throw that word around often, but I don't think there is any plausible way you could argue against this being at the top. And the reason for that is because this is the only film on the list that doesn't feel half-baked or downright incomplete. It only took them 10 tries in 20 years, but they actually made a movie that tells a competent story that can be considered functional on the base level. Sure, it's super generic and predictable and whatnot, but it manages to deliver on everything it promises. Just a simple underdog sports movie that hits all the beats you would expect and doesn't give up or fall apart at any point. And when you look at the shit we'll be getting into later, that is massive praise right there. But to look at RRR on its own, separate from the hellhole in which it spawned from, this film is actually somewhat enjoyable. Like I said in my original review, it has some characters that I do genuinely like, such as the epic as shit villain or Nash. Even the main characters, while pretty bland and standard, aren't really annoying or horribly written, I guess. They do a decent-ish job of making you feel for the main character and what's at stake for his family despite him being just a generic underdog. A few scenes even come close to being halfway emotionally moving. They don't quite make it there, but I can genuinely see the effort here. And on top of serviceable writing, the movie also has some pretty fun scenes, mainly the races themselves, which are decently engaging and cool. The climax is genuinely suspenseful, and the take on me scene is really neat too. But these are just kind of one-off moments, and a lot of the movie is still generic nothingness. The main character and his love interest are tolerable enough, but they really don't have enough interesting going on to carry an entire narrative, and especially not a super generic one with loads of predictable tropes and lame character arcs. There's still the generic third act breakup and sad moment, and whenever the characters aren't racing, the movie grinds to a screeching halt to devote itself to nothing except this lame character development. It's not too terribly interesting, and these portions are easily overshadowed by the actual races. The animation is also very hit or miss, with some scenes that look nice, but others that look cheap and weird. In general, the movie still feels behind the curve for a movie released so late into the CG animation game, with the visuals nor the writing feeling up to par for a movie that released within a month of Across the Spider-Verse. But for what it is, Rally Road Racers is perfectly fine. I can't really think of anything it does inherently wrong outside of just being kind of generic. It genuinely feels like a movie with a clear and concise vision instead of a heap of steaming bullshit. That vision is one of a generic kids movie with minimal value for adults compared to other options, but it manages to get that job done competently enough. Dare I say, if this had been the first Vanguard movie and they had made it in 2005, I might have even considered calling it decent. And considering the standards we're working with, that is one hell of a compliment. But speaking of hell, it's about time we start making our descent. We won't be entering demonic territory for a while, but trust me, it's only downhill from here.
I think you're nuts.
Like I said at the beginning, for this video I marathoned all 10 Vanguard movies in order to ensure my opinions were as up to date as possible. And for most of them, I got exactly what I expected. However, there was one, and I mean only one, that actually took me by surprise in how not abysmal it ended up being. And that film is their 2016 masterwork known as Get Squirrely, or Acorn's Operation Crackdown, who gives a shit. This was a movie I had already watched a couple years back in preparation for seeing Rally Road Racers in theaters. And for whatever reason, I gave it a half star and considered it to be the second worst movie in their filmography, which is crazy for me to look at now that I've seen all of these. Like, I really considered this to be among the worst of the worst. Fuck, I considered this to be worse than Wish. It kind of baffles me because after watching it again for this video, I have been enlightened. This is far better than Wish. At least 6 or 7 Vanguard movies are. But also, I surprisingly don't hate this movie anymore, and I'm honestly not sure what caused me to dislike it so much back then. Dare I say I enjoyed this movie? Now, am I saying that it's good? No. In the grand scheme of animated movies, this one is still quite bad. But compared to most of Vanguard's other slop, this one is actually not the worst thing ever. In fact, out of all 10 movies, I would say this is the closest one gets to being creative. The concept of forest animals breaking into this nut prison factory is honestly kind of fun. I usually really enjoy heist movies, and it's a shame animation doesn't touch upon this genre too much, so I'll take what I can get. And while they definitely could have done a lot more with this concept if this were made by a competent studio, for what it is, the execution isn't actually half bad. I like seeing them get the team together and make use of their different skill sets in order to form a break-in plan. And while the plan they eventually do come up with feels a little basic, it's still kind of fun to see all the different ways the animals get past these obstacles. And the animals themselves are a fun group. None of them are super deep or complex or anything, but thankfully none got on my nerves either. Plus there's the occasional epic as shit one like Oscar the Butler. Look at this little dude. Greatest character in cinematic history, I'd say. Plus, the voice performances are honestly pretty enjoyable and make the otherwise dull interactions between the crew kind of fun. There's actually enough to appreciate here to the point where I never got bored or wanted to kill myself while watching this. But with that said, the movie is still bad. Sure, the concept is fun, but the writing is ultimately still generic and trite. This movie doesn't really have the same level of wit or sharp comedic timing that I usually enjoy in the best cheap animated films. There are a couple of funny moments, but a lot of scenes lack overall direction or humor outside of the most basic jokes, and it gets repetitive after a while. For most of the movie, you really just want to see them get to the actual mission, but so much time is dedicated to the planning of said mission. Well, that, and squirrel drama between the main squirrel and his squirrel friend. It adds basically nothing to the main story and is predictable and whatever. And for being the main character, this guy is ironically the least interesting member of the entire cast. He has like no personality other than leader, and really sticks out considering how fun some of the other characters can be. But yeah, most of the movie is just building up to the heist, which is fun at first, but begins to get stale as they begin to struggle to come up with new obstacles for the characters to overcome. It's not painful to sit through or anything, it just makes you wish there was something more interesting going on. At least that's what I thought, because then we get to the actual mission, and it's the least engaging part of the movie. It doesn't feel like there are enough moving pieces that are really working together, and nothing feels fast or fluid enough to keep tensions high. Everything feels just a tad bit off, which is due in part to the writing, but also the hilariously bad animation. Yeah, this movie is not exactly a looker, and somehow looks considerably worse than the Vanguard movies released years before this one. The way these characters look and move makes me uncomfortable somehow, and they just didn't bother rendering textures or backgrounds. I like how their leaf texture is just a low resolution photo of leaves layered on the shot. There are parts in this that look so bad and unfinished that it honestly reminds me of Food Fight. There are also times where we see animals who don't wear clothes, even though all the main characters in this movie do wear clothes. That also makes me uncomfortable. It's laughably cheap, and that air of cheapness persists throughout the entire film and just makes it not as enjoyable as it could have been. And yet, I think I still had a good time with it. I'm not making excuses. This is still absolutely a bad movie. But I can feel the crew trying with the $20 budget they were given and having fun along the way. That may not seem like a big compliment now, but once we get further down the list and see the movies where it feels like nobody wanted to make them, it becomes easier to appreciate a movie that is trying to make the most out of its situation. It's mildly creative. It's kinda entertaining. It's not atrocious. So you know what? I'll take it. So congrats to Get Squirrely for only being the 9th worst Vanguard movie. I'm sorry I didn't recognize its glory sooner. Please forgive me, Oscar. How can I ever make it up to you? And if you still don't believe that this is better than Wish, do yourself a favor and go listen to the Victoria Justice Squirrel song. An absolute bop that clears every other song in existence. You can thank me later.
In the parallel universe where Pigeon!
Valiant was Vanguard's grand debut into the realm of animated features and is about war pigeons in World War II, implying that Hitler exists within the Vanguard cinematic canon. It was also released by Disney in the US, implying that Hitler also exists within the Disney cinematic canon. Yeah, Disney was in a bit of an awkward position around this time, as they were seeing major success from the first few Pixar movies, but were at risk of losing them because they weren't fully bought out yet. So I imagine they started panicking and tried to find another animation studio that could replace Pixar after the original deal was up. Naturally, Naturally, they chose Vanguard and signed a 4-picture contract thinking they would be the next Pixar. I'm sure that worked out for them. Okay, I might be being a bit mean to Valiant. This was their first movie after all, and we didn't know what horrors would follow. And to give credit where credit is due, Valiant is a mildly ambitious first film for a studio to make. Centering around pigeons in World War II, in a time where most CGI animated features focused on fantastical characters and worlds, honestly makes it stand out a lot. Even nowadays, it's a concept I can't really see any major American animation studio taking a crack at. Though, something tells me they were a little cocky in that regard. On Wikipedia, there's a quote from the director that reads, "If you think it's Nemo with feathers, then you're wrong. It's easier to create colorful tropical fish or toys running around a kid's room. Valiant is different. It's set in the Second World War. It's dark, dangerous, yet funny, and that's quite hard." Damn, and people say I have a big ego. If it's your first time making an animated movie, maybe don't immediately hype your movie up as being bigger and better than some of the best and most important animated films of that time. Especially not if your movie is, this. Yeah, Valiant is not very good. Acceptable enough for the first feature film from a new animation studio in 2005, I suppose, but there really isn't that much to praise about it. I think it's a cute idea to have a film about pigeons that helped soldiers in World War II, but that's really all it is, a cute idea that they don't do a whole lot with. They barely take advantage of the fact that they're making a bird war movie, to the point where once you get past the initial concept, not a whole lot separates this movie from any other war movie, other than the fact that it's for kids. This small guy wants to enlist in the war, and he does, and they train, and they go on a mission, and he's a hero now. Movie over, yippee! It just feels like every other generic war movie story, only now it's a generic war movie about birds aimed at children. The film follows every beat you would expect, which would be fine, I guess, but Valiant also suffers from poor pacing and a real lack of focus. The film is only 75 minutes long, so by the time the heroes are done training and are sent on the mission, the film is halfway over. Then the heroes are given a message that they need to deliver, and now there's only 20 minutes left in the movie to do so. A shame too, because if they had just gotten this important message at the beginning and the entire movie was about the journey and peril of delivering it, they could have had something here. But no, we gotta spend half the movie on training shenanigans and the villain birds interrogating John Cleese for some reason. As is, the film doesn't really feel like a complete story, but more so a series of things that just kinda happen. Valiant is the exact same protagonist as that guy from Rally Road Racers whom I totally didn't forget the name of. He barely goes through any sort of development, nor does he really do anything up until the ending. He befriends this transphobic Ricky Gervais bird who doesn't want to be in the army, so he leaves and then comes back for no reason. Like, literally no reason at all. There's no scene of him changing his mind or anything. That's what I call character development. To be fair, he is the best character in the movie and the only one with some kind of a personality. He is enjoyable adjacent. There's some other birds in the squad who don't do anything, including one that dies, but then not really, because we can't have a war movie where someone dies. Blasphemy. The villains literally just kind of sit in their lair the entire movie, and there's nothing interesting about them other than the fact that the main one is directly based on Hitler himself. That is not a joke. That is real. Okay. This movie has only 2 female characters, and one of them is a love interest that does nothing, and the other is a rat literally named D-Girl. Interesting choice. So nearly this entire movie's cast is pointless and forgettable, which basically sums up the entire movie. It's not that funny or engaging, has no strong emotional hook, and is also really drab visually. Which I get, it's a war movie after all. I just prefer if everything didn't look and was colored like vomit. And these pigeon designs don't really lend themselves well to emotional moments or comedic slapstick. I don't know. At the very least, this movie isn't annoying or unbearable to sit through. It's just kind of basic. Not the absolute worst first impression a studio could make, but certainly not a good one. Probably the better 2005 animated bird movie released by Disney though, so there's that.
Us as human beings are quite unmistakably excellent assists for one another, allowing us to collaborate more efficiently.
Gnome Alone. Great title. This is a movie about gnomes who guard a house from purple testicles. I like how later in the movie we see the big leader of the purple testicles and it looks like this. Fine, I'll stop. This is the first of the Netflix Vanguard movies, both in ranking and release order. It was actually supposed to be released in theaters, but for some reason, the distributors backed out and it was instead sold to the streaming service. Can you imagine why they would do that? I certainly can't. Who wouldn't want to have Gnome Alone on their distribution resume? Who wouldn't want to watch Gnome Alone on the big screen? Okay, I'm being mean. You know, maybe I'm just approaching this list the wrong way. I should try and be positive and point out what's good about these movies, especially as they start to get worse. worse? Well, for one, I enjoy the gnomes themselves. They're decently fun characters and aren't really annoying like you'd think they would be. I especially like this one voiced by George Lopez, aka Boss Baby Santa. I like him because George Lopez is epic. The lore of the gnomes protecting the world or whatever from these things isn't the deepest or most complex, but it's decent enough concept for a kids movie, I suppose. I like how Mad Libby it sounds, gnomes protecting the world from purple balls with green goop. Not the most creative or inspired concept, but it could be fun. And the scenes where they're actually fighting against the monsters are enjoyable for what they are. This was a revolutionary Vanguard movie in the sense that it was their first one with animation that doesn't look completely unfinished. Not great, mind you, but at least it's watchable. I liked it when Nerd Boy said his grandma doesn't want to be friends with him and when he fell on his face. I liked when she puts the food on this side of the table and then the shot pans around and the food is on the other side of the table. Great work. I liked this line.
I think I'm coming down with something. Must be that virus everyone's been talking about.
Is this joke still funny? Anyways, Gnome Alone is bad. It's such a boring generic kids movie with absurdly little to say and even less unique to offer its audience. Sure, the initial concept is fun, but they don't do anything with it. Most of the movie is just people sitting around the house and occasionally fighting monsters that randomly show up. The latter portions are fun enough, but they barely come into play. For the most part, you're just waiting for the plot to go somewhere, literally anywhere at all. So this girl and her mom move into this spooky house, and the girl is voiced by Becky G, who laughably does not give a shit. So Becky G finds this gem in the attic and then gives it away, but the gem was what was keeping the monster portals from opening. I love when main characters do stupid things in order for the plot to progress, so they need to get the gem back, so she goes to the school and the other girl says she'll bring it to the dance. So they go to the dance later and the girl reveals that she actually threw the gem out. So this entire chunk of the movie waiting to get the stone back was completely pointless. Cool. The entire movie also suffers from an overall lack of tension. Like, the purple testicles are the only threat this movie has, and the characters need to protect the world from destruction. But they feel so easy to defeat and never really become more of a threat as the movie progresses until the very end where the big one shows up. With the way the movie is, it feels like there's barely any consequence to just giving up, and as if there's literally nothing at stake. Maybe if it was more of a zombie/survival movie where everyone is locked in the house and they need to defeat the testicles to get out, that could have been more interesting. But everyone just comes and goes from the house as they please, so the easiest solution to this entire movie's problem is to just run away. The stakes are also deflated by all this pointless teen drama going on. Oh no, Becky G wants to be with all the cool girls, but then she realizes Nerd Boy was her friend all along, and that they obviously make a great team. Fuck you! I fucking cheered when he said that line. This is just predictable and boring, and I don't care about either of these characters, so yeah. Then the resolution is that phone batteries make the monsters explode, I think, and the next day it's like nothing ever happened. Because nothing did happen. This entire movie was a goddamn waste of time. Why am I even talking about it? It's not like you care. It's not like anyone cares. Is there anyone who gives a shit about Gnome Alone?
Me! Hello everyone, I'm Jacob from the YouTube channel Jacob Outlook, and I'm here to give my whole spiel on Gnome Alone. The basic consensus of this movie is that it's bad and cringe and boring, and yeah, I agree, it's kinda cringe. It's very lazy Netflix standard fare, but I certainly would not call it boring. In fact, I kind of love this movie from an ironic standpoint. Now, to be fair, the whole gnome lore itself is actually kind of dull and boring, though I think the pink orbs have some decent physical hijinks that do get mildly visually interesting, certainly more interesting than the minions. But the part of the movie that I'm the most attached to is this whole subplot where Chloe is worried about her social status at school, like a 20-aughts Disney Channel original movie protagonist, complete with this jock character whose whole personality is, "Cha dude, what's up?" And also these peppy, popular girls who look like they could be in like High School Musical. And finally, this nerd guy who's literally the "I'll win her over with my gameplay" meme. His introduction scene literally has him go up to Chloe and try to act cool, but also be noticeably the most uncomfortable person to be around. And then he turns around and whispers very loudly something along the lines of, "Oh, Come on, Liam. This is your first time talking to this cool girl. You have to make a good first impression, so man up, dude. That's not his voice, but I'd like to imagine it is. And it's just so ridiculous and almost incel-y, and doesn't really take itself so seriously, so I just kind of love how stupid it all is. There's even one point in the film where they're talking about the popular girl group. I think one of their names was Brittany, and when Chloe wants to talk to them, Liam's all like, you can't trust them. Trust me, they will just ruin your life. I'm sorry, I just love doing this voice for him. But the culmination of all of this is when Chloe is sucking up to these Regina George-esque caricatures at a prom, because there's always a prom in these kinds of scenarios, and then Liam comes along and is like, hey, you're supposed to get this plot device amulet from them, which, to be fair, that is what Chloe should be doing. And when these Pacifico Northwest wannabes ask if he's her boyfriend, because of course they do, Chloe goes like, ew, he's not my boyfriend. And then is this whole mildly rude but also minuscule interaction is treated like the biggest deal in the world, like it's trying to take itself so devastatingly seriously. Like, Liam walks away so sad, so very, very sad, and Chloe is like, oh, I betrayed him, and it's all like, bro, it's not that deep. What are we even doing here? I just burst out laughing at this scene every time. I love how bad this is. Anyway, that's my whole take on it. If you want to hear more from me on other animated movies and shows of the like, you can check out my channel at Jacob Outlook, where I am planning on putting out a series of movie and show reviews sometime soon, including a potential series of videos on my favorite video game ever, Slay the Princess, which you should definitely play, and eventually I am going to get to putting out my 2-hour analysis of Liz and the Bluebird. I'm just not having a set release date at this time. Liz and the Bluebird is very good, by the way, probably the best movie of all time, and you should check it out sometime. You'll probably like it better than Emoji did, who had an objectively wrong rating of it, though maybe he'll like it more when he gets around to rewatching it, which will be after he gets around to finishing Sound Euphonium, which will be after he gets around to finishing Your Lie in April, which will be after he gets around to finishing Claned, which will be after—
Okay, that's enough from you. Gnome Alone is boring, lame, and overall substanceless. So that makes it the 4th best movie on the list. You guys have no idea how painful this is for me.
Well, I'd say it serves you right.
Jacob, don't make me get out the repellent.
What repellent?
He sure was charming.
Charming was one of only 2 Vanguard movies I had yet to see before starting this project. Beforehand, I had always gotten this one confused for one of the older Vanguard movies we haven't gotten to yet. And to give mild credit where it isn't due, this movie does at least feel a smidgen more interesting and original than that other one. It's about Prince Charming, who is engaged to 3 different princesses and needs to learn about true love. Not a bad idea, if an extremely obvious angle to go for. In the first 2 minutes of the movie, Charming literally says this:
Love? I wish I even knew what that meant.
But that's still kinda a cute concept, I guess. In addition, I like the setup of how Prince Charming has a curse which causes every woman to fall in love with him, and all the men want to kill him for stealing all their wives. That's actually kinda funny, so long as you ignore the fact that this implies everyone in the kingdom is hetero, because this is a Vanguard movie. Ignoring the fact that Cody from Get Squirrely was implied gay and Oscar was canon asexual. Trust me, my uncle works at Vanguard. Anywho, this movie is cute enough for like 10 to 15 minutes, but then the plot gets started and you realize, oh yeah, this is a shitty kids movie. This thief girl needs to guide the prince to this place, and they go on an adventure and encounter obstacles and fall in love along the way, and yada yada yada. It's so predictable and lame, even by this studio's incredibly low standards. Also, the thief girl is disguised as a man during this journey for some reason. I guess it's so the prince doesn't fall in love with her, because once again, homosexual people don't exist in this universe. So they've got like a Mulan thing going on for most of the movie. I don't know, it's something, I guess. But yeah, the journey is excruciatingly boring and there are no unique set pieces or funny jokes. The movie is obsessed with pancakes for some bizarre reason. Like, they keep showing up and I think it's supposed to be a running gag, but there's no joke. It's just pancakes. Why does this movie have like 20 different executive producers? Follow-up question, why is one of them Peter Nagel, producer of Paws of Fury and Hit Pig? You know, movies that are actually decent. I swear I will review Hit Pig at some point. I haven't forgotten, my promise. John Cleese plays the fairy godmother in this, and okay, that actually made me smile. Hate to say it, but John Cleese is a redeeming factor in any Vanguard movie he's in. Unlike the person who played Charming, whose performance gets very annoying after a while. He also played Augustin from Encanto, which, fun fact, is better than every Vanguard movie. John Cleese also plays this kind executioner later in the movie, who I also liked. Oh yeah, about that. The prince thinks that the only way to solve his problem is to kill himself so he can kill the curse. He writes suicide letters to all the girls in the kingdom and prepares to be publicly hung. I just... What? That was so out of left field in a direction I never would have expected from a Vanguard movie that I kinda enjoyed it, to be honest. It was the only somewhat interesting and unique development in this entire movie. Because otherwise, this film is boring and substanceless and overall just not very good. I expected more from the director of Rally Road Racers and Get Squirrely. I genuinely cannot think of a single reason why you should watch this, especially when Shrek is right there and is a million times better than this shit in every way. In fact, it's better than every Vanguard movie. This ranking has already drained me and we're only halfway done. This is actual torture. Why am I doing this? I think I should just stop and talk about good movies instead. Wait, actually, that's not what I think. I think I feel a song coming on.
Dear John H. Williams, your films are my crutch. They're fucking garbage and they should be known as such. I suffer through these and I just don't see the light. Because Ross Venokur does not know how to write. I gotta tell ya, this experience has been hard.
Hard?
Has been bad.
Bad?
Has been rough.
Kinky.
And I have got to say that I have had enough. I keep on hoping at least one will be alright. But they all end up as useless, annoying trite. Please take my advice, this shit won't suffice. I'm begging you to hear my plea. Cause all the shit is beyond comprehension. It's absolutely worth all this reprehension. All you gotta do is just stop making dog shit and I'll be free. Sincerely, emoji.
Are we done yet?
Nobody likes babies at
My superhero movie.
_. Great title. This is the final Vanguard movie I had yet to see before this marathon, and I knew nothing about it going in other than Jacob said it was bad. But he also said Inspector Sun was bad, and that movie is peak cinnamon, so maybe he's just wrong. Well, the opening sequence in space was kinda cool.
Oh,
Vanguard animation.
behind this one. Now I know it's good.
Then this superhero lands on a planet and there's a "he's right behind me, isn't he" joke. You know, I dare pretentious cinephiles who think every 5 out of 10 Marvel movie is the worst thing ever created to watch all these Vanguard movies. Not to defend mediocre Marvel trite, but I think you need to experience actual bottom of the barrel cinema if you genuinely think Deadpool and Wolverine is a 1 out of 10 movie. So right off the bat, the animation somehow looks cheaper than the other Netflix Vanguard movies that came before this one. And at first I thought it was because this opening scene is inside of a video game, so it's supposed to look that way, but no, then we cut to the real world and the movie just naturally looks like that. If you couldn't tell, I'm writing this segment as I watch the movie instead of afterwards like I usually do. Guys, this is the 9th Vanguard movie I've watched in the past week. I do not give a shit. I want it to be over. So this kid is an epic gamer stereotype and I already want him to die. This villain dude with a distractingly unintimidating voice looks like a rejected Clone Wars design. So he breaks into the daycare and steals the superhero guy's babies, but they escape and come to Earth? Earth? So like the events of the video game the guy was playing were like real events? Are there cameras filming the aliens and transmitting it to the video game? And if they're real events, what is he playing with his controller? I guess it's a neat idea to have video game characters come to the real world as opposed to the other way around, but it doesn't make much sense if these things are in the same universe. Why am I questioning this movie? I stopped expecting competency from these a long time ago. As in, before I started this marathon. Annoying gamer guy and this other girl have to take care of the babies, and the alien guy comes to Earth to get them back.
Okay, toys. You want toys? Here you go. This is a... And here is...
Dick!
And this is a...
Pussy!
I will say this movie's voice acting is at least ironically enjoyable, even if I hate literally every single character. I like when the baby takes the Jeep and the military guy is like, "Get back here with my Jeep." And then the Jeep is rolling towards him and he's like, "Pussy!" Also, the military is involved now, I guess. And after seeing the superpowered babies, they just sort of stand there instead of chasing after them or reporting this or anything. How far are we into this shit? 33 minutes? I'll give it that it's more enjoyable than Trouble, at least. I like when the alien guy calls the radio station. You know what? Fuck this. I'm getting something to eat.
6 hours later.
Okay, so I took a longer break than I expected because I didn't want to continue the movie. Can you blame me? So they get kidnapped by the military and this lady mentions communists. I'd make a joke about this, but we already saw pigeon Nazis in one of these movies, so whatever. Alien dude then kidnaps the babies, so I guess we're at the climax already. So they chase after him and oh yeah, the superhero guy, I forgot he was in this movie. Oh my god, they're finally taking advantage of the fact that they're playing a video game in the real world. It only took them until the last 30 minutes. You know, this climax kind of reminds me of Despicable Me. Did you know Jacob also called that movie bad? I can't believe I'm sticking up for Illumination, but maybe he should also be forced to watch all these movies. So they land the ship and alien dude comes out and the military lady says,
"The poopy diaper just hit the fan, and poop just got real."
The boy drives an ice cream truck and stands up to the villain with an unenthusiastic sounding speech. Again, this movie's bad voice acting is one of the only enjoyable things about it. So the babies beat the alien in a scene that is actually kind of fun. This climax isn't too bad. Not worth sitting through the rest of the movie for, but more enjoyable than literally everything else in it. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this movie is obsessed with Lionel Richie for some reason. Sure. The guy and girl end up together because it wouldn't be a Vanguard movie without hetero romances. A giant monster shows up, and then the credits roll. I'm not even joking, that's literally how the movie ends. There is no way these kids would be able to fight against this monster without the superpowered babies, so I'm presuming they died right after this. For that reason, I'll give this movie a 3 out of 10 instead of a 2. And because this credit song I'm listening to right now is actually kind of a banger. But yeah, it was still pretty shit. Dumb plot, dumb characters, subpar animation, unfunny humor, and hilariously bad voice acting. All of this comes together to make a terrible movie that is somehow still only the 5th worst one on the list. Oh yeah, we're about to get into some real shit. Buckle up.
Pussy! Rocket monkeys, monkeys in space.
Long time no see, old friend. For those unaware, Space Chimps was my introduction to Vanguard, as well as the start of me talking about their movies on this channel. And with such, it is what inadvertently caused me to fall down the garbage hole that is this studio's filmography. And here we are today. I owe it all to this goddamn movie. And I think a lot of people do, as this remains the most well-known and quote-unquote successful movie in their catalog, but not exactly for, good reasons. Yeah, Space Chimps is doo-doo. I don't remember what I said in my original video, but I'm going to go out on a limb anyway and say that it all holds up. Because I did not have a fun time watching this movie again for this godforsaken video. If you ever feel like you're wasting your life, just remember that you could be rewatching Space Chimps for a video about Vanguard animation. What else is there even to say about this movie? It's Space Chimps. This is one of those movies where it quite literally feels like you're descending into hell the longer you watch it. The opening on Earth is tolerable, I suppose, but then we go to space and the movie turns into this absolute nightmare clusterfuck that's simultaneously abhorrently shitty and really boring. The entire second act of this movie is just characters walking on top of a desert PNG backdrop where barely anything substantial or interesting happens. Occasionally we cut to the villain who is moderately entertaining, but even then this side of the story also just meanders around around until it's time for the short and anticlimactic climax. Then the chimps fly back to Earth and the movie ends. So next to nothing happened this entire movie and I wasted my time. Cool. All the character arcs are shallow and over in like 1 to 2 scenes. All the set pieces are boring and devoid of any sort of tension whatsoever given how bad the animation is. The jokes occasionally come close to getting a chuckle, but for the most part lack direction, competent timing, or any sort of cleverness. Zartog is somewhat fun, like I said. The voice actors are trying, I guess. And, I don't fucking know. I like how the Tubi version of this movie doesn't even have the movie's logo. Literally nobody gave a shit when putting this thing on the service. That is the single funniest thing related to this movie. Well, that, and the fact that Fox's upload for this movie's trailer was uploaded in April of 2008, before the movie came out. Yet the description of this video mentions that Fox is the home of movies like Avatar, Rio, Peanuts, and Maze Runner, movies and franchises that came out long after Space Chimps. This means that an employee at Fox cared enough to log onto YouTube and edit the trailer description for a shitty kids movie nobody except me cares about. Honestly, give that person a raise. They clearly give more of a shit about the legacy of Fox more than Bob Iger does. And you know what, Bob Iger? Space Chimps is still better than Wish, because Zartog is a better written villain than Magnifico. So yeah, suck it. But with that said, this is the final movie on the list that I would consider to be better than Wish. That's right, we're officially crossing into uncharted territory. The 3 biggest abominations Vanguard has ever shot out. Films that aren't even saved by funny monkeys or dirty crack house vibes. This was a mistake. Please help me. I want it to be over. Please make it stop.
The two of us together again. There's nothing we can't do.
We obviously make a great team.
You are in big trouble!
Trouble, also known as Doggone Trouble, is a 2019 animated comedy film directed by Kevin Johnson and starring Big Sean Anderson, Pamela Adlon, and Lucy Hale. It was the final film role of Betty White before her death in 2021. Can you imagine that? The final role of your extensive career being a Vanguard movie? That just makes me depressed. Also, I didn't even realize this until I was writing just now, but I forgot to include this movie anywhere in the thumbnail I made prior to starting this marathon. I just forgot and nobody said anything. I could very easily go find a Trouble PNG and edit it onto the thumbnail, but I'm going to be perfectly honest, this movie isn't even worth that minuscule amount of effort from me. Trouble sucks. Or Doggone Trouble. I don't fucking care. I am not joking when I say this is one of the most generic, bland, fish-paced nothing movies I have ever seen in my life. The only impressive thing regarding it is that it made me long for the old pre-Netflix days of Vanguard animation. Say what you will about movies like Get Squirrely or Valiant, but they have genuinely interesting ideas for animated films at their core. And even if they aren't executed well and are just generally bad movies, at least they feel somewhat distinct and unique compared to the competition. The same cannot be said about Trouble, which is what every other generic bargain bin dog movie is, without an iota of personality. In fact, this feels less like it came from a studio that is historically known for making affronts to God, and a lot more like it came from Illumination. A basic, cheap-feeling experience aimed at the lowest common denominator with nothing unique or artistic to offer. Only if this was an Illumination movie, people would probably pretend that it's good, it would make a criminal amount of money at the box office, it would be gassed up by animation Twitter over real movies, and then people would get mad at me for saying other movies exist and that they should be watched. But it's a Vanguard movie, so they don't even have that luxury. What even is there to talk about here? Like I said, it's just the most plain dog movie you can possibly imagine, and there's so little about it that's actually noteworthy. I hate this stupid dog and his agonizingly unfitting voice from a rapper who does not give a shit.
How could this happen? I'm a Vanderhoosen. This is terrible.
He has a chew toy that is a reference to the gnomes from Gnome Alone. Then he gets lost or something and meets a bunch of squirrels who say the word nuts a lot. There are 3 separate jokes about the fact that it sounds inappropriate. We also get generic dog jokes. Ha ha, wiping your butt, cone head, playing dead, I wanna die. The villains are this really annoying couple whose entire joke is that they want want money. The only time I felt anything watching this movie was when one of them says,
"Look at the size of that thing."
Yeah, look at the size of that thing.
So they hire this hunter to track down the dog, and he's also voiced by Agustin from Encanto. What dirt does Vanguard have on this man to drag him down into 2 of their pieces of shit? So the hunter teams up with the squirrels for some reason, and they trash the room of the girl the dog is staying with. And then she comes back and she thinks the dog made the mess, and she's all like, bad dog, and sends him to the pound, and it's really sad, and I fucking hate this stupid movie. Maybe it's because this was the 8th movie in the marathon and I was absolutely fed up with all this garbage by the time I got to it, but I genuinely could not stand it. Because there's nothing here. No unique plot or jokes or scenarios or anything really. Like I said, it's just an Illumination movie with lower production values and animation quality. I think the only way anybody could enjoy this shit is if they were a dog themselves. And this time I'm confident I'm not going to upset anybody by saying that. I don't think anybody can defend this movie because there's nothing to defend. Snoop Dogg plays a dog named Snoop and he raps at the end. If I wanted to watch a Snoop Dogg animated movie, I would watch the fucking Garfield movie. If I wanted to watch a bad Vanguard movie, I would watch any of the 7 movies I ranked above this one. I had to give the edge to Space Chimps for God's sake. Can you imagine being so empty and boring and worthless that I deem Space Chimps as better than you? I never want to see or think about this shitty ass movie ever again, and you shouldn't watch it either. But you should watch Little Amelie, or The Character of Rain. An absolute masterpiece of animation that will both enchant and delight you before making you cry a river of tears from its beauty. I can guarantee you that it is better than Trouble, or any Vanguard movie for that matter. Please go watch it, as it'll likely be on digital by the time I release this video. And I don't want to hear any excuses, you hear me? You all watched that god-awful Lilo and Stitch remake and the Minecraft movie in theaters. I know you can cough up a few bucks for this cute little Belgian girl. Not to mention last year you all watched Despicable Me 4, a movie that isn't good at all and nobody likes it. Seriously, does anybody actually like this movie? Do Illumination diehards like it? Genuinely, what is there to like about it that elevates it to being anywhere near good?
They lazily brought back all the villains for an ending dance party.
Oh yeah, that makes the entire movie good and worth existing, I guess. Name me one other good thing about Despicable Me 4 that makes it worthy of $972 million.
Illumination is against AI.
Yeah, that's great and all, but Miyazaki is also against AI, and he makes movies that are, how do you say it?
Good?
Have you ever heard of good movies with actual stories and themes and artistry? Of course you haven't, because you're too busy watching this shit. Genuinely so worthless. And yet, I'd still take it over Moana 2 because it's actually a movie and not a lazily retooled TV series. Oh yeah, that's another movie you people gave way too much money. And nobody likes that movie either. Why do you keep paying for these movies? There are so many better options, animated or not. You people do realize you can say no to poor quality half-assed products that you aren't going to end up liking. No wonder Nintendo charges so much for these games and gets away with it. Have you seen some of the shit Americans give money to? I'm sick of it. I'm sick and tired of— What was this segment supposed to be about again? Oh yeah, stupid Vanguard dog movie that I totally remember the name of. Why do I do this to myself? Well, I have to finish what I started, and we still have 2 movies to go that I somehow hate more. Let's just get this over with so you can all go watch Little Amelie.
And then let's happily ever after.
Who put a wicked stepmother in charge? Are there free elections?
Happily Not Ever After is a special case because as far as I know, this is the only movie that Vanguard adopted rather than made on their own from scratch. There's actually an interesting amount of history behind this film that you can hear about in this video. But basically, this started as an adaptation of some German cartoon in the year 2000, before Vanguard even existed. But somehow, they got their grubby little hands on it and turned it into a Shrek knockoff. I know this video says the movie isn't a Shrek knockoff, and I'm sure it wasn't originally, but John H. Williams just couldn't help himself and turned what they had into one of the most desperate feeling animated films I've ever seen. I seriously could not stand this one. Maybe I would have some kind of remorse for it if I grew up with it, but I grew up with good movies, so I'm not having any of this. Like I just said, the perfect word to describe this movie is desperate. It's so clear that this is a product of the mid-2000s when everyone was after the success of Shrek, to the point where they turned what could have been a decent fairy tale story into an abhorrent mess that doesn't have a creative bone in its body. The world building in this movie movie is absurdly dull and lazy. So in Fairy Tale Land, what a unique and exciting name, there's this wizard who controls everything and makes sure fairy tales play out how they're supposed to. And that's it. Really? That's the best you could come up with? At least Charming took an existing fairy tale character and made their own original story out of him. You know things are bad when I find myself having to compliment Charming. In this movie, we get Rick the dishwasher who is in love with Cinderella. He's a dishwasher and everyone treats him like a dishwasher, and he can't be with Cinderella because he is not a prince, he is a dishwasher. Did I mention he washes dishes? Anyway, the wizard goes to Scotland and leaves these idiots in charge. They act like idiots, and then the evil stepmother just walks into the god chamber, which so happens to be in the regular world. It's not like in another world or anything. Normal people can just walk into it and they can Then she takes over very easily, like literally in the span of 1 minute. So now that the evil lady has control of the entire universe, what's her evil plan? I don't know, man. You tell me. The fairy tale villains invade the castle and just sort of throw a party for the rest of the movie. This movie quite literally feels like it was written by a 6-year-old, or more accurately, a group of adults who hit a brick wall after every plot point and submitted their first draft. It does not have a single original idea, or any ideas at all. Like, even if this isn't a Shrek knockoff and that movie didn't exist, it's just so lame. The entire second act of this movie is unfunny characters aimlessly walking around and trying to find a way to solve things. The stakes feel non-existent because there's no tension to anything going on. So what if the evil stepmother wins? What's she gonna do? It's not like I care about this poorly developed world and these shitty characters. Ella is boring. Rick the dishwasher is boring. The prince is stupid, and that's his character. Monk and Mambo are occasionally almost funny, but for the most part just remind you that this movie is a shameless Shrek copycat and you could be watching Shrek, or literally anything else for that matter, instead. Oh my god, look at us. We're so snarky and hip and cool. Why are you leaving the theater? Don't leave the theater. The animation is garbage and makes this feel even more like a direct-to-video Barbie movie. The action is boring and uncreative, a byproduct of being in this shitty movie. Is there anything I liked? Anything at all? I mean, I guess I liked the end credits because the song they use is a banger. This joke was alright.
I was dancing with the prince and my dress disappeared.
Okay, so that's too much information.
Guys, I'm really struggling here. I lost my will to live 5 movies ago. I don't want to keep repeating myself because it really is just as simple as this movie is boring and uncreative and poorly made and bad. It has nothing to say, which is par for the course for this studio, but in addition, there's no energy or spark to anything. The inciting incident of this movie is a woman walking into a room. Then later, the heroes walk back into this room because anyone can walk into this godforsaken room, and then they just sort of shove the stepmother into a portal. This climax is a joke. This villain is a joke. This movie is a joke. I hated it. It's a near worthless piece of cinematic sludge that has nothing even remotely creative to offer and amounts to nothing by the end except 6% on Rotten Tomatoes and a trashy direct-to-video sequel. A trashy direct-to-video sequel that Vanguard thankfully had no involvement with whatsoever, meaning it does not count for this list and I never have to touch it ever. Thank God. Can you imagine being such a bad idea for a movie that Vanguard doesn't want to make you? What a mess. Happily and Ever After is booty butt garbage and you should never watch it. And you should never watch Trouble or Space Chimps or Fee at R Less or any of this garbage. This is actual torture and I don't know how this studio manages to stay alive. I don't know how they manage to produce so much dog shit. And I don't know how, but I do know that they managed to make something even worse. This is it. The end of the line. The bottom spot. A movie that was more painful to sit through than every other film on the list combined. Prepare yourself, because there's no turning back. For the past 3 years, whenever the idea of a Vanguard animation ranking popped up in my mind like a parasite I could never get rid of, I always knew what the bottom spot was going to be. And even with all the pain, boredom, and agony these other movies have put me through during this experience, I was completely right. Nothing even came close to the crowning jewel of all of Vanguard's shit. A movie so bad that the word abysmal doesn't even begin to describe its horrors. This shit is ungodly, unbelievably dreadful in every sense of the word. An appalling work of cinematic filth that is not only a blight against the art of animation, not only a blight against the art of cinema, but a blight against the human race as a whole. Ladies and gentlemen, the worst of the worst, 100 miles beneath the bottom of the barrel garbage to ever come out of Vanguard, or any other studio for that matter, is Space Chimps 2: Zartog Strikes Back. This movie, this rancid abomination that was released onto an unsuspecting world, is unlike anything else I've ever seen. It's on a level of bad that is practically unheard of. One of those fabled movies that has quite literally zero redeeming qualities and absolutely nothing that comes anywhere remotely close to enjoyable. And how perfect is it that this horrific monstrosity was made by the man who started it all, the one who Vanguard wouldn't exist without, John H. Williams. And I don't mean he was a producer like all these other pieces of shit. No, he stepped into the director's chair for the first and only time in his career and made this unholy, abominable, heinously wicked spawn of Satan. Let me run that by you again. This businessman, a film producer with no experience in writing, editing, or directing, decided it would be a good idea to try and make a sequel to an already abysmal movie and helm the project all on his own. It was not. Oh my god, it was not a good idea. I can assure you, you have no idea how abhorrently torturous and painful sitting through this movie is. Even calling this thing, this wretched abomination, a movie is being extraordinarily generous. Actually, it's a straight up lie. The definition of a movie is a story or event recorded by a camera as a set of moving images and shown in a theater or on television. I don't know if you caught it, but there's a very important word in that definition that I don't think Sir John H. Williams is familiar with. Story. A series of events with a beginning, middle, and end. The bare, and I mean the barest fucking minimum I expect out of a feature film is for things to happen. That unbelievably low bar is one that every other Vanguard movie manages to pass. These movies have plots and things that happen to form a narrative. Bad as they may be, it's something. Even Food Fight, often considered to be the worst animated film of all time, at the very least, has a story! Space Chimps 2 does not. It is nothing. Nothing happens in this movie. Comet the monkey goes to the planet from the first movie and fucks around. That's it. The other monkeys have jetpacks and they fuck around. That's it. Zartog is back and he gets a Wii remote and stands in a room doing absolutely nothing for half the goddamn movie. It's a mind-numbing, soul-sucking experience watching this thing. I genuinely have never seen a movie so lazy, vapid, and devoid of any sort of quality, or anything for that matter. There are no character arcs, or stakes, or jokes, or plot points, or reasons for me to not kill myself. You may think I'm exaggerating, or have lost my sanity after all this ranking has put me through, but I can assure you, I'm not. I cannot stress enough that this entire movie is just characters fucking around and doing nothing. Cutting from scene to scene every 10 seconds to appeal to the TikTok brains of Gen Z. It never ends. Nothing ever progresses or moves forward. It's an endless cycle of misery and pain. Like I said, calling this a movie would be straight up lying. This is an anti-movie, anti-entertainment, anti-art. Something that wasn't made with passion or love or even a fucking idea for a story. Food Fight is more of a movie than this. Amelia Perez is less offensive than the existence of this. Oh, and Wish? It might as well be Violet Evergarden compared to this shit. This is something that was made for torture chambers. A piece of media that goes out of its way to insult, torment, and excruciate the viewer to the point where it feels unreal. Actually, I can't even say that, because Space Chimps 2 is so bad that it goes beyond resembling a Vanguard movie and reminds me of something else. Years ago, in my Studio Ghibli ranking, I said that Earwig and the Witch was comparable to the works of the vile Wow Now Entertainment, a studio that puts negative effort into their movies, producing mountains of AI-generated garbage on a yearly basis. I'll admit, that was way too harsh. For as bad as it is, for as much as I loathe it, Earwig is indeed a movie made by human beings who were trying. It does not feel like the product of artificial intelligence or a money laundering scheme gone too far. Earwig and the Witch is not Wow Now quality, but I can't say the same thing about Space Chimps 2. I don't care who actually made it. A movie so vapid and empty, devoid of substance or anything going on at all, is a Wow Now movie. It does not get any worse than this. If I didn't make it clear from the Wow Now comparison, Space Chimps 2 has as much merit as AI quote-unquote art. And I don't throw that around lightly. If you watched my Wish video, you may have noticed that not once did I accuse the movie of being a product of artificial intelligence like other YouTubers would, because it wasn't. I'm not just saying this in the heat of the moment. I mean it. Nobody cared when making this. It has no artistic merit whatsoever. It's a void where entertainment goes to die, and one of the only movies where I cannot see anyone on the face of the earth enjoying it. Heed my warning. Never, ever dare to touch this thing. It only spreads torment and suffering to the unsuspecting eyes it attracts. Congratulations to Space Chimps 2 Zartog Strikes Back for being the worst movie to ever come out of Vanguard Animation and the worst animated film of all time. Well, that's a month of my life I'm never gonna get back. So now that we're done with this painful trek through the filmography of possibly the worst animation studio ever made by humans, what have we learned? Did I manage to uncover the truth as to how this studio manages to live on to this day despite producing nothing but embarrassing failures? Not really, actually. Maybe this company really is just one big money laundering scheme disguised as an animation studio. Maybe John Cleese is so rich he manages to single-handedly fund all this garbage. Maybe the Netflix movies were secretly mega hits in the same vein as K-pop Demon Hunters. Maybe I'm stupid for questioning the existence of an animation studio nobody on the face of the earth except me gives a shit about. Who knows? Who cares? All I know is that Vanguard Animation is a sad, sad studio that makes bad movies, and Rally Road Racers, which is mediocre. But honestly, even with all the pain this ranking has put me through and all the garbage I had to watch, I don't know if I would really say I hate this studio as a whole. I absolutely hate some of these movies, despise in fact. But looking at the entire studio, there isn't really much for me to get angry over. Ultimately, they're just a no-name studio with no reputation to uphold, so the quality of their films doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Compare that to modern Disney Animation, who does have a prestigious reputation reputation to uphold and unlimited resources at hand, yet actively decides to strive for less and give audiences the bare minimum? Or how about Illumination with their meandering fluff that has nothing to add to the world except taking up theater space? These studios annoy and frustrate me because of their large presence and the impact they have on the general public's perception of animation. Vanguard does not have that same status. They never have and likely never will. Maybe if the studio gains sudden popularity and Trouble 2 makes more money than Neja 2, then I'll have a reason to be annoyed. As is, however, I don't really have it in me to unironically have overwhelmingly strong negative opinions toward the studio in the same way I feel about the others. I'm not gonna act like Vanguard makes better movies than these others, because we literally just spent this entire video learning how awful their filmography can be. But at the end of the day, they're just bad children's movies with no presence in the animation landscape. They're just dumb fluff for dumb kids, and that's it. And if that's all Vanguard needs to get by as an independent animation studio in a market dominated by corporate monsters who shut down everything, and AI, then who am I to belittle them? They can do whatever they please, as long as it makes John H. Williams happy. Maybe one day Vanguard will blossom into a renowned animation powerhouse whose works rival that of Kyoto Animation. I mean, their latest film is their magnum opus, so who knows? It'd be cool, albeit extremely funny if that happens, but for the time being, Vanguard Animation isn't really worth my energy, positive or negative. I'll just continue my life watching and appreciating the good animated films we get, instead of getting worked up on a few bad ones. Animation is, and always will be, a glorious art form, regardless of how much trash this or any other studio spews out. And ultimately, these bad movies do serve in giving even more worth to the good ones, making it easier to appreciate them for the masterpieces that they are. And as long as other, more competent studios keep making these movies, I'll remain happy and satisfied. That's all I have to say. Thank you all for watching and all the support you guys have given me throughout the past year. Have yourself a Merry Christmas, and more importantly, go watch Little Amelie. You guys owe me.
What repellent? Okay, so I don't know if you want me to, like, make various noises as I scurry away with cartoon sound effects, but since you're pulling up an Ocean Waves D&D DVD in this, I have an idea. So, hold on, give me a second. I want to set this down. Alright. Ah, what the fuck, bro? Get that shit away from me! No, I'm gone. I'm gone. Get that fuck out. Alright, that's my recording. I hope it all goes well.